going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today, we're going to be talking everything football. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on your favorite NFL team as well as who you predict to make/win the Super Bowl. So without further ado, let's get right on into this. So here we can see, of course, I've pulled up every record for all the teams as of right now. This is the Friday before week 11. So some teams have played. Of course, Thursday we had the Commanders play the Eagles, with the Eagles taking the win. So they, of course, have already started their week, but everyone else will have 10 games under their belt or so with the bye and all that. We'll get into it here. So I just want to kind of run through every division, talk a little bit about each team, and then we'll go into a playoff picture and talk about all that. Starting with the AFC East. AFC East, of course, has the Bills at the top of it. They are leading the division, most likely going to win the division. They are currently at 8-2. The roster looks really good, honestly. They are trying to get their receivers involved a little bit more. Josh Allen has been really careful passing the ball, hasn't been throwing. He's been limiting the number of picks he has been throwing, but he has been throwing the ball decently well to start the year. We're over halfway to the start of the season, and he has been a top candidate for possible MVP. Then you have the Dolphins. Of course, the Dolphins have been getting hit by an injury bug. If you guys know me, I am a Dolphins fan. So it is a little bit of a bummer when your quarterback gets another concussion injury. Now, this concussion injury, he's refusing to wear the Guardian cap, to each their own. It's his decision. It's his family that that they've discussed about, and he doesn't want to wear it. Cool. Right. The offense, though, has looked a little better, of course, now that he's back. It's still not fantastic. There's still clear gaps. The defense isn't phenomenal. But overall, it kind of fits the record that we have right now, being 3-6, not looking too hot. The Jets, also a team not looking too great. On paper, they look phenomenal. But on, actually playing, they're missing something. Their defense is definitely way overrated. I picked up their defense in fantasy football. It just hasn't been performing well. So it actually led me to dropping their defense because it hasn't been performing too great. Aaron Rodgers definitely looks 40 years old out there on the field. He has been getting guys involved like Garrett Wilson, who started off the year very slow, but has then picked it up dramatically. Bringing in Devontae definitely has helped alleviate that pressure. So they are on the right trajectory, but of course, they're not making the playoffs. The Patriots are that last team. Kind of a surprise, honestly. I thought that the Patriots were going to be one of the worst football teams. They aren't playing fantastic football, don't get me wrong, but Drake May actually looks decent. They took a few games, let him kind of sit behind Jacoby Brissett, and then he just was not performing, so they said, Drake May, go crazy. Now, it is clear as day that the Patriots need to draft offense. I think the defense is not terrible. It's not great, but still, it's manageable to where if you go get an offensive weapon for somebody to throw the ball to, because that is the main problem right now, is Drake May doesn't really have a fantastic offensive line or anyone to throw that is a terrible matchup for a corner. They're probably licking their chops as a corner when they see that they have to play the Patriots, and the toughest receiver out there is Demario Douglas. No disrespect to him, but he ain't nothing crazy. He's not, you don't have to go up against the Tyreek Hills, the receiving cores that you might have to go up against some of these other squads. So continuing on, we have the AFC North here. Now, this is a tough division, of course. We all know. We'll start at the bottom. We'll work our way up. The Browns, of course, are 2-7. Part of that was Deshaun Watson. The other part, this team's just not that good. They should be a lot better, but they're just not that good. Jameis Winston is, of course, doing Jameis Winston things right now where he'll have a decent game and then tag on 3 interceptions at the end of it. So the Browns aren't phenomenal or anything. They probably should be looking at the quarterback of their future in the draft this year. The Bengals, though. The Bengals don't have a terrible team. They've been in a couple close games. It's just not executing at the end of the game. Jamar Chase, of course, has been erupting. He is the #1 fantasy football receiver. So keep that in mind when you're looking to make your trades and everything, of course. I mean, if you have Jamar, don't trade him. Keep him, etc. But the Bengals probably will not make the playoffs because, of course, at the second seed in this division here, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who are one game behind the Steelers. And they play each other this weekend. It should be a tough matchup there. Steelers Ravens, of course, going to be a solid game. Lamar Jackson is playing decent ball out there. And then they also have had games that they've just been super close in. Now, they closed it out against the Bengals. They lost early in the season to the Chiefs in a one-score game. Derrick Henry looks phenomenal in some games. Other games, he is very quiet. But, overall, I think they need another receiver over there. I don't think they have enough on the outside to help out Lamar. I think that they should focus it, especially since Mark Andrews' age has shown. You also, of course, Zay Flowers can't do it all for receiving corps, so maybe they look at a receiver in the draft there. The Steelers being the number one team in this division is kind of shocking because, of course, we all expected it to be the Ravens to start the year and the Bengals. The Steelers, though, are 7-2. The defense is phenomenal. And honestly, Russell Wilson has not been bad. He's been pretty decent. They are somebody that they are just playing solid football on the offensive end and amazing football on that defensive side to really help them propel them. And, of course, who knows what we're going to get out of Russell Wilson come playoff time, whether it's going to be a phenomenal game or whether it's going to be some kind of shit show. Next up, this is one of the weakest divisions in football, the AFC South here. Starting off with the Jaguars, they're just pretty much an abysmal roster. Top to bottom, head coach is, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is actually the solution now. It is questioned. This whole season has made me question because there are some times that I watch Trevor Lawrence and he makes these plays on the field that I'm like, all right, he is an NFL starting quarterback. He is a solid quarterback. I can see the future and the vision of why he was drafted so high and why he's literally been compared to some of the greats of the game. Then you look at their run game, not phenomenal. With even decent running backs like Travis Etienne, same thing. Sometimes I see him and I'm like, okay, solid. Other times I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? Tank Bigsby seems like a serviceable running back, right? But the defense is pretty bad. The offensive line, pretty bad. The coach, terrible. Of course, and then Trevor Lawrence is just a huge question mark. I don't know if he is actually a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think that he is, and I have a lot of hope for the guy, and I hope that it's just this mediocre coaching and all that, but it's got me worried thinking about the future for them, of course. So moving on here, the Titans. Now, the Titans are the exact opposite. I feel like they have a lot of pieces here. They just don't have a quarterback. They have Mason Rudolph and Will Levis, and that is just a terrible combination. Both have been terrible, making god-awful plays on the field. Tony Pollard has actually been a really good bright side for them. A lot of people said that he was overpaid in the offseason, going over there to Tennessee. But, hey, he's been decent for them. The O-line, they've solidified with their rookie tackle that they drafted. He looks pretty solid there. The defense isn't terrible either. The defense is actually pretty good. I think you just need a quarterback to solve it. And there might be a few quarterbacks on the market, and you might look in the draft to take a quarterback, depending on these. This QB class is quite interesting, of course, because there's guys like Shedeur Sanders that are going to come out, and who knows what his actual NFL talent is. I got high hopes for the guy. But then you have these dynamic, interesting players that you might draft instead because they're generational talent, like Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter being one of those guys that plays both sides of the ball, which we don't really ever see. So the Titans are in a unique spot because they're not performing well as they should not be because they don't have a quarterback. The Colts are up next, and Anthony Richardson is a huge problem here. He does not pass the ball really good. He doesn't look like a starting quarterback for me. Honestly, I see him more of a I'm interested to see when they start doing a dual quarterback system, what a guy like Anthony Richardson could do in a system like that, where the Saints do this a little bit with Taysom Hill and Derek Carr, or Taysom Hill and Drew Brees when he was still in the league, but where you have two quarterbacks on the field and you don't really know who's going to throw the ball. Of course, most of the time you'll have your guy like Drew Brees throwing the ball or Derek Carr, but to sprinkle in a guy who you can kind of put anywhere because of his athletic frame, such as Anthony Richardson or Taysom Hill, And yeah, one game he might be extremely quiet, might not do too much. Other game he erupts, has 2 touchdowns, 40 rushing yards. He threw a touchdown also, kind of like that. So they're in a unique boat because they really should just lose games, honestly. The Texans are up next at 6-4, and they don't look great. They are definitely. I'm not sure if last year was just an anomaly and they overperformed their initial expectations and they've kind of settled down to earth of what they actually could be, or they are more of a team that just is having a tough stretch. I mean, the Eagles had it last year, um, and look at them now. They're actually towards the top of their division, and they look pretty decent. The Texans are just interesting because you saw how C.J. Stroud played last year, but they don't. He doesn't look nearly the same quarterback as he was last year. Definitely doesn't. So this division, probably the weakest division in football. Top 2 for sure, weakest division in football. Next up here, the AFC West. This is a tough division. You got 3 teams here that are competing for playoff spots, of course. Of course, the Chiefs are undefeated. They're probably going to go on to the Super Bowl. They look phenomenal. They dominate the game. I'm wondering if they're getting too close with it, as in they played the Broncos, and playing the Broncos, they ended up blocking a field goal to win the game. The offense doesn't look phenomenal, and that is what I'm worried about. Is this offense doesn't look phenomenal? They look little lackluster, like they're missing something. And of course, they don't have Rashee Rice right now because of the injury. Xavier Worthy hasn't been the guy that we kind of expected to pop. Then you just look at a lot of these dudes aren't performing on the offensive side. Travis Kelce actually has been coming into his own, I will say that. But next up here, we do have the Chargers, who look a lot better. They're allowing Justin Herbert to kind of air the ball out a little bit more. The Broncos themselves have a phenomenal defense here. They are just kind of working through the motions with getting a rookie quarterback up to speed of today's NFL standards, right? He's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie quarterback. We're expecting that, right? He's a little bit of a veteran quarterback for a rookie, but still, and that's where you see these glimmers of him really stepping his game up in the future. Now, that's where I could see Denver being a scary team that sneaks into the playoffs. Maybe they squeak past the Chargers and they're able to sneak up there into the playoff picture. And yeah, if they can, then they could be a dangerous team that could make a run if Bo Nix really starts coming into his own. The Raiders, of course, being the last pick. I don't know why they've won a single game this year. They look terrible. They, of course, traded Devontae Adams. They don't have Josh Jacobs anymore. The quarterback is needed. The run game is needed. The O-line needs work. The receivers need work. The defense, there's only a few pieces that don't need work on the defensive end, being Max Crosby pretty much. But the Raiders are in a tough situation. They don't look good in any spot. No bright side. Gardner Minshew is not your future. Aiden O'Connell is not your future. Alexander Madison is not your future. Like, guys like that, it looks terrible. I mean, I don't know what else I can say about the Raiders than it looks awful. Next up here, we have the NFC East. Competitive, for sure. Top-heavy competitive, though. We'll start at the bottom here. We'll talk about the Giants. The Giants are just in an interesting spot. Of course, you let Saquon go in the offseason. We all watched Hard Knocks, where it was embarrassing to watch the owner of the company, or the owner of the team, say, hey, do not let Saquon walk, and I will not be able to sleep if he walks and leaves to one of our rivals, being either the Cowboys or the Eagles at the time. He then goes and sides with the Eagles, and he literally had the chance to break his own single-game rushing yards record for himself, but he chose actually not to. Now, I will say, they do play the Giants one more time, and I'm sure he's going to have a phenomenal game then as well. All right, next up here we have the Cowboys, and they honestly are just like the Raiders. They look terrible in every sort of fashion. They're somebody that's just not anything. Nothing looks great to me, in my opinion. I've never thought that Dak was the future. I think he's a mediocre quarterback. C+, B- talent. Not going to win you a game, but one of those quarterbacks that'll keep you in a game. Similar to Kirk Cousins, similar to a Brock Purdy-esque. I don't think that those are quarterbacks that are going to win you games and win you championships and Super Bowls. Those are the guys that help if you have like Brock Purdy. If he's got every single weapon on the field that is phenomenal, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, George Kittle, they're all fully healthy. You got one of the best tackles to ever play the game, Trent Williams out there. You have a great all-line, you have a great run game, great defense, etc. You just need to be mediocre. Okay, I think that he can help you win a game or two, as in he's not going to go down the field, chase down the field, and just go pop off. You're down 14 with 2 minutes to go, and he needs to quickly score. He's not doing that. I'm sorry. He's not that quarterback. Same thing with Dak Prescott. The Cowboys here, they look awful, I think. They got smacked by the Eagles. Yes, the first half was close. The second half was not. So at the end of the day, that second half, that's all that matters, is the fact that they got demolished. The Commanders are next up. A lot of bright side here. Of course, they need some help for the receivers. They need some corner help as well. But there's a lot of bright spots to this roster. Austin Eckler, solid pickup, of course. You have him with the unique talent of Brian Robinson as well. Jaden Daniels is phenomenal so far to start the season. He's kind of calmed down a little bit in his play as the season did progress, but of course, you kind of expected him to have a few games that were a little rocky as he played some of these tougher teams like the Eagles or a great Bears defense, all those good teams that he has played. He played the Ravens as well. But yeah, they are set up for the future, definitely. They need to focus, go get him a weapon in the draft, focus O-line as well. And then, yeah, I think that they'll be pretty solid. Last in the NFC East, we're going to be talking about the Eagles. Now, the Eagles here are an interesting team because they started the year actually pretty slow and didn't look great, right? And then, of course, they started picking things up, and they have been dominant ever since. They are a team that they got one of the best running backs in football, if not right now the best running back in football. Great receivers, good quarterback. Of course, he was dealing with an ankle injury that was released but not released. It was slipped up by accident by Nick Sirianni when he was asked on the panel. Even though Jalen Hurts, his ankle wasn't listed on the injury report, he slipped up and said he's been dealing with an ankle injury. So who knows what that actually means. But yeah, the Eagles, I think that they need some corner help, just like the Commanders. They could use some help on the outside there, protecting those receivers. But other than that, their team is pretty solid. That O-line is still sticking pretty strong. Of course, the tush push, not as perfect as it was last year, but still pretty dominant once they figured it out. The NFC North is probably the best division of football. Even the 4-5 Bears, who they have not looked great, but there are bright spots. That defense looks phenomenal. That defense is great. Of course, they had that stupid play against the Commanders with the Hail Mary and all that, where the guy wasn't paying attention. We're not even going to talk about that. But the defense looks really good. The offense, though, is struggling. The Caleb Williams is struggling pretty hard to start the season, which you expect out of a rookie quarterback. But someone who was as hyped up as he was with all this talent and all this comparative to all these greats, similar to Trevor Lawrence, has not necessarily stepped up and shined in a whole lot, except for one time when they played the Jaguars, which the Jaguars' defense is terrible. The Bears, though, have a bright spot. Of course, they got Rome Odunze, DJ Moore locked down. They've got weapons. It's just not clicking together. A lot of people are thinking it's a coach. Maybe a new offensive coordinator is needed there. But right now, nothing is working on that offensive end. They need something there. The Packers are next up, and you can kind of flip that. Their offense is decent. You just have Jordan Love, who throws a lot of interceptions. The defense is pretty solid, too. But overall, yeah, Jordan Love, he's been dealing with injuries, so they've been flipping back and forth between Malik Willis and Jordan Love here and there. But he is pick heavy. That is what we have noticed to start the season. The Vikings next up are a dangerous team because Sam Darnold, again, another interception-heavy guy, but also at that same time, that defense is great. He's got a good run game, good receivers. Of course, one of the best receivers in the NFL. TJ Hawkinson is back as well. Justin Jefferson, of course, one of the best receivers in the NFL. Just a lot of bright spots here for this squad. And who expected Sam Darnold to be as good as Sam Darnold has been? So, and last but not least, in the NFC North, we have the Detroit Lions here at 8-1, looking dominant, of course. Now, this last week, they didn't look great because they played pretty poorly with Jared Goff throwing a lot of picks, but they still sneaked a win, and that's decent when you're in your situation that you are in, where you're in a tight race, but you're one of the better teams in football. Learning to squeak out those wins and not like the Ravens, for example. They had tough loss against the Chiefs to start the year, and then later figured out let's beat the Bengals by one score, right? Of course. So now it came down to the wire. It was kind of in the Bengals' hands, but the Lions themselves, they squeaked out that win, which is good. They only have one loss on the year. They are looking dominant. That O-line is the best offensive line in football. Run game with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is good. Those receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, is phenomenal, of course. Jameson Williams stepping into his own, of course, as well. So we have two more divisions here. The NFC South with the Panthers being the laughingstock of the league because they're terrible. They actually squeaked out a win last week, so shout out to them. The Saints, also a pretty laughingstock team, just looking pretty bad all around. They just need players similar to the Raiders. They're in that category. Buccaneers here should probably have a better record than they do. A lot of injury bugs rolling through this squad, and when they didn't have an injury bug, they were kind of rolling. So they have an explosive offense, and the defense isn't terrible. It's just not phenomenal. The Falcons are at the top of this division, too, with so many weapons. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. Of course, you have your quarterback, Kirk Cousins. The defense needs some work, for sure. But that offense is pretty darn good because you have a quarterback who can throw for 500 yards. So we'll keep that in mind. NFC West, the last division, also one of the toughest divisions in football, as all four teams are playing actually decent to mediocre, but it's a tight race. So the Seahawks don't look, they're so confusing because some games I'm like, yeah, okay, this is the Seahawks team that we all know, and we all, they are dominant defense, offense is clicking, and then there's other games where it's like, what the hell is Geno Smith doing? What is the defense doing? How are you letting this guy run all over you, etc.? They are a very confusing roster. The Rams were dealing with an injury bug, but of course, Puka's back, Cooper Kupp's back. They look like a whole new offense now. Looks a lot better on the field. The defense is still needing some work, but of course, you have young players like Jared Verse, who looks pretty darn good. The Niners here are 5-4. Again, another team dealing with an injury bug, but they've been able to squeak out some wins here and there, of course, against the Buccaneers. And then the Niners themselves, though, I talked about it before. I think Brock Purdy is not the answer. I think Brock Purdy is somebody that he's not going to go down the field and win you a game, but he's somebody that if you have the lead, he will keep the lead for you, kind of thing. He's not going to lose you a game. I think if you throw somebody else in that system, they could be phenomenal. I think any quarterback kind of could be really good in that offense. I believe it. It's like Jimmy Garoppolo basically took this offense and made a Super Bowl also. So let's keep that in mind. Jimmy Garoppolo, not a good quarterback. Same thing, Brock Purdy takes him to the Super Bowl. Can't get over the hump, right? He can't win you a game. So that's the issue here with the Niners. Last team of this video is the Cardinals. The Cardinals are an interesting squad because Marvin Harrison was having games where he was just quiet, or he was having games where he's explosive. So who really knows what's actually going on there? Kyler Murray can't see a receiver to save his freaking life, though, sometimes. And I think a lot of it has to do with his size. He is tiny on the field. These O-linemen, I saw a view of some of these O-linemen when they have to drop back for pass block and everything, and they have to go very wide with their pocket because Kyler Murray just needs these lanes to see, and he can't see over that O-line, and that's an issue. Similar to Bryce Young struggling with seeing over that offensive line and seeing these open receivers. Kyler Murray was having those issues. Now, of course, they're 6-4, so right now it doesn't look like a huge big deal. But, of course, keep that in mind as the season does progress. Now, overall, tight race for a lot of different divisions, things that are still going to be shaken up to this day, as this division is the top team and the bottom team are only separated by 2 games. So keep that in mind as we still have a lot of football left to play. So if you guys did enjoy this video, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on your favorite NFL team and whether or not they will make the Super Bowl. Again, it's been another Heart Over Height episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.